Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. The unbeaten Chinese heavyweight Zhang Zhilei has signed a promotional deal with Matchroom Boxing. And this is not the first time he's had a relationship with Matchroom, and we'll come to that, but he's now promoted by them outright. So you can see here on screen, this is the press release. We're going to get to that, and then a few thoughts, including regarding Michael Hunter, because you can ask the question, Matchroom is signing Zhang Zhilei, but they cut Hunter loose just a couple of months ago. Does that make sense? Is the China market such a sort of pull here that he is a guy that should be signed or kept over the likes of Michael Hunter? It's a question, but also at 37, what does Zhang Zhilei have left? Who can he fight? Where can he go? What can he do? So we'll get to that. But the press release, you can see here, Zhang signs promotional deal with Matchroom. And I would just say that I'm not sure who proofed this, but this is from the Matchroom website, because it does read a little bit strange and there is a few errors. I think this is a case that this was signed, sealed and delivered a number of weeks ago, but they've sat on it and it's just been released at this point. But it says Zhang Zhilei has signed a promotional deal with Matchroom, a deal that sees Eddie Hearn's promotional outfit appointed as the sole promoter of the Chinese star. And actually, see, it's the 19th of September at the time that I'm recording this video, but you can see it says September 9, but this has only just been announced. So that's either not a typo, I don't know. But I would also say that the IBF ranking that is referred to in the next paragraph, that was actually, he was slid 3 places down to 15th, and this was 2 or 3 weeks ago. So just bear that in mind. So it reads, Zhang Zhilei has signed a promotional deal with Matchroom, a deal that sees Eddie Hearn's promotional outfit appointed as the sole promoter of the Chinese star. And for context, he was previously co-promoted by Matchroom along with Rock Nation. So Rock Nation is now out of sports, and another Rock Nation fighter who was cut loose recently was Damani Rock. But obviously in this case, Zhang Zhilei has been picked up by Matchroom, who worked with him for at least one fight so far. There was meant to be others, but they didn't pan out. Visa issues and such had proven to be an issue, but I'll come to that. Anyway, I'll get to the rest of the press release and then on to some of the thoughts. There is a bit going on here. So he says the press release says the unbeaten Chinese heavyweight, 21-0, 16 knockouts, returned to action in November in Monte Carlo. That's last November, with a 10-round win over Andrei Rudenko, seeing Zhang pick up the WBO Oriental title for the 3rd time. Zhang now sits at number 11 with the WBO and 12 with the IBF as he aims to convert his prolific amateur career in the pro game. So as I mentioned, that IBF ranking is incorrect. It's number 15. Big Bang is in New Jersey training for his return to the ring stateside in November, and the 37-year-old giant wants to put his career into overdrive and prove that he is ready to challenge for the world titles in the paid ranks. Then a quote, a very big bolded quote here. The heavyweight scene couldn't be any hotter right now, so this is the perfect time for Zhilei to get back into action and throw his name into the mix, and that's promoter Eddie Hearn. The press release goes on to say, I'm very happy to enter into an agreement with Matchroom, said Zhang. They are one of the best promoters in the world. I'm the best heavyweight coming out of China. I just need an opportunity to become the best in the world, which I strongly believe that Matchroom is able to provide. With each of us focused on our part, I wish a happy and successful future. That's Zhang Zhilei quoted there. Then it goes on to quote Eddie Hearn. That was that big quote above that we just covered, but he continues, Zhilei is ready to take on all comers as he aims for his 22nd win in November. The next step for Big Bang will be then to face his fellow top-class contenders and get in a position for a world title shot. Then a spokesperson for Zhang Zhilei is quoted, Terry Lane, saying, "We are extremely excited about the partnership with Matchroom. Zhilei is a world-class heavyweight and Matchroom is one of the world premier boxing promoters. It's a natural fit, and this puts Zhilei in the mix amongst boxing's top big men." So that was the press release and the quotes there. So I do contend that this was an announcement that they've been sitting on for some time. And Zhang Zhilei on social media had hinted something big was coming. And this was a number of weeks ago. So I was thinking it would be something like this, given the Damani Rock situation. He was cut loose from Rock Nation, a month or two ago. It seemed logical something similar was going to be happening with Zhang Zhilei. But I guess the question is now, what's going to happen next with his career? Because really it has been a case of almost wasted opportunity. Remembering Zhang Zhilei is 37 years old. This is a guy who won a silver medal at the Olympics in 2008. So he's a guy that has been around the scene, amateurs and pro, for some time now. 37 years old, currently 21-0, 16 knockouts. That fight in November last year, Andrei Rudenko, that was the first real true step up in his career. There had been other opportunities that had fallen over. Previously in 2018, he was meant to actually face Alexander Ustinov in Monte Carlo, but he had visa issues, and that was when Michael Hunter stepped in, and he got some significant profile off the back of that win because it followed the Martin Piccoli win. He got a win over Alexander Ustinov, and then sort of parlayed that into other fights and got a lot of sort of profile boost from those couple of fights. So I guess for a guy like Zhang Zhilei, it's a case of missed opportunities, and inactivity has really been a bit of a killer in his career. You think that he turned pro all the way back in 2014. He's just got 21 fights on the ledger so far, and most of those are against, journeyman level opposition, and sometimes not very good journeyman level opposition. And when you consider since about 2016 or so, he's only been having sort of 1 or 2 rounds of action in most of the fights that he's been in. If you look at his box rec, you'll see that he's got stoppages generally in the first and second round against low-level opposition. The Rudenko fight, that was certainly a bigger step up, and he looked good in that. He needed that fight, he needed that win, he needed to sort of transition into that sort of fringe contender sort of status. So I guess the question now is, what can he actually do in the division? He's 37 years old. Arguably, his prime must be ebbing away to some extent. You can see through some of the clips that have been running in the sort of background here, he is a guy who does have some skills. He actually looks pretty good on the pads, and he looks pretty good in the ring. He is actually a very good, talented southpaw, and he's got good skills. He's a good body puncher. But the question is, what can they do with him now? And a couple of years ago, there was the talk about potentially him and Anthony Joshua having a fight at the Bird's Nest in China at the stadium there. But that always felt like a little bit pie in the sky. And I know some people will be looking at this going, well, they cut Michael Hunter, but they're keeping this guy. And you might be able to go, well, there is the Chinese market, and I'm sure some people will make that argument that maybe it's a bit of a sleeping giant on the boxing front, and perhaps Zhang Zhilei can be a guy that can help break through because the Chinese heavyweight, he can get some interest in the local market and maybe add some dollars to the bottom line for Matchroom. Maybe that is some of the thinking. But certainly on the basis of his career, what he's done so far, he's not necessarily, from what I understand from people I've spoken to, he's not necessarily a big star in China. And some of the attendances at his fights would tend to sort of back that up. But it's not to say that he can't have a boost in profile through this deal. But it's going to depend on who he fights and who he beats, because he's got to keep winning and get towards a heavyweight title shot to really start boosting his profile back in China especially. And I was sort of thinking, and a couple of people had mentioned this on Twitter, but the names of Hughie Fury, Martin Piccoli, Sergey Kuzmin, though that is the sort of level of fight that I think he especially needs, because I think it's a step up from Andrei Rudenko, who is a little bit faded and jaded at this point, but still a decent opponent. But those guys, Piccoli, Hughie Fury, and also Sergey Kuzmin, I think that's the sort of level of fight he needs to get to the next step. All of those guys are sort of, at a place in their careers where they're struggling to sort of break through. Someone like a Sergey Kuzmin's had opportunities and failed. Someone like Martin Piccoli and Zhang Zhilei, they're waiting for their opportunities. But hopefully they don't have to wait too long, because in Zhang Zhilei's case, he hasn't got time to waste. He's 37 years old. So he's going to be back in November. And I would expect this is probably not going to be a great fight. Maybe it's going to be because of the inactivity. He hasn't fought since November last year. It'll be a full year out of the ring. Perhaps it will be a quick in and out sort of scenario, and then look to put him back in the ring in December or January in a bigger and better fight. I mean, if it is with a decent opponent, all the better. He did take that Rudenko fight, and that was basically on, a year's inactivity, and he looked good in that. He didn't really look like he'd sort of suffered any ring rust. So there is some fights out there for Zhang Zhilei, and based on the graphic, the one that they put out, see here on screen, it's got Sky and also DAZN. So there is scope, I think, that he could be in fights in the UK and also the US. He is training and living in the United States for the most part, so it is going to make sense for him to fight there. But I think they will plug and play Zhang Zhilei into wherever he can actually get a fight that is meaningful and is going to progress his career. So in terms of the other issue, though, and I guess it's the elephant in the room to some extent, they cut Michael Hunter loose, but then they're signing Zhang Zhilei outright on a promotional deal. And besides the China element that I raised before, I mean, what are the other sort of factors that could have influenced signing him? Well, one of them just could be money. It just could be, at this point, the money that he's going to get as opposed to a guy like Michael Hunter could be far less than Hunter is willing to take. So it could be a case of Zhang Zhilei is getting signed at a discount here, and he's really looking for the opportunity. And to get certain fights, and it's just a reality in the heavyweight division at this point, you have to be with certain promoters, because a lot of the sort of bigger and better fights in the heavyweight division, they are made in-house at the moment, unless there is eliminators or something similar to that. A lot of independent guys don't necessarily get the sort of fights that they would want to be in. Sometimes they have to take fights at short notice against guys that they probably wouldn't have thought or wouldn't have wanted to be matched with at that point. And sometimes heavyweight boxing, besides the matchmaking, it's about timing. And Zhang, he really has to watch the clock here at 37 years old if he's going to do anything. It is go time. And this is something I was saying a couple of years ago, that he really needed to make a push, and this was when he was 35. He had to make the most of his last sort of prime years of his career. I mean, he does have a style, because he's a guy that's southpaw, good size at 6'6". He's got good skills. As he sort of ages and the athleticism fades a bit, he can sort of rely back on the height and the skills to sort of get him through some situations in the ring. But, he wants to be sort of in bigger fights right now as opposed to in 2 or 3 years. But it's hard to see the path to a title shot at the moment for guys like Zhang, and also, Martin Bakole, Hughie Fury, Sergey Kuzmin, those guys that are sort of sitting on the fringe, wanting opportunities to get to world level or get back to world level. So this signing overall, though, it's not necessarily surprising. He already was co-promoted by Matchroom previously. That was a deal announced about 18 months ago. This is now just sort of formalizing he's promoted by them outright. The what next? It's an interesting question, but he obviously needs to be in a meaningful fight sooner rather than later. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.